Hello, and welcome to the PC Gaming Weekspot, your recap of the last 7 days in PC video gaming. My name is Colin Mahern, and joining me this very week, he's one of you, and he looks at it like this. August 13th, 2005, he left professional wrestling. August 20th, 2021, he's back. It's the one and only Mr. Matthew Castle.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to have you back in professional wrestling.
Does this mean
Matthew.
I need to hit you over the head with a folding chair?
You can, if that's your type of professional wrestling, if that's how you seek out victories, that's all right.
Well, that's how I get the crowd on my side, and also I've got a promotion with the folding chair company, so it's
true.
It's a bit of a 2-for-1.
You and DFS like that. Did this seep into your intake of pop culture over the last week at all? Have you any idea what I'm talking about?
I believe you're talking about CM Punk.
I almost put this in just to see if it did seep in.
I saw some people talking about him on Twitter, so I know he is one of the WrestleMen. I assume it's him.
Something to do with that. Yes, it is CM Punk. He did come back to professional wrestling, joined AEW. It was very exciting. I set my alarm for 5 to 3 on Saturday morning, Matthew. Got up, watched it, and then I was just destroyed for the rest of the day. It was an awful...
Did he do his wrestling?
He did his talking. He didn't do much wrestling. But then talking is just as much a part of wrestling as
the actual wrestling.
The best bit. Maybe. Was he... when did you have your WrestleMania experience?
2007.
Oh, it would have been pre-CM Punk, so I suppose he wouldn't have been in the WWE then, I don't think. Shame. But yeah, I was going to say you'd like him. I don't know if you would. He's quite counterculture, as the name would suggest. CM Punk, yeah, he's maybe a bit too much of a renegade for your liking.
Sounds too. So he's probably too edgy for me.
Yeah, maybe.
I like that. I like the one who spits apples and people. That's it. That's all I have is one wrestling reference, which is the man who spits apples at people.
Well, when he comes back to wrestling, I'll be sure to let you know when he comes back to mainstream wrestling.
He was in that Glow.
He was? You're right. Yeah. Was that your favourite part of it?
I was like, yo, it's my friend, the apple spitter.
The apple man.
No, I say friend. Anyway, what is this? The Wrestling Weekspot?
Yes. So let's crack on because we have a few things to cover and... yeah, let's just crack on. Matthew, grab. We've actually a lot of things to cover. Grab your crank, open your gob, because I have some information snacks for you.
Info snacks for his gob.
Not many information snacks. I have some meaty main courses for you. In terms of information snacks, delays, Matthew. Let's keep it a little bit wrestling flavoured for the moment.
Oh, very much wrestling flavoured.
WWE 2K 2020.
That's 100% wrestling related.
2K20. Jesus wept. 2K22 was meant to be coming out kind of November-ish time, holidays 2021. It's now coming out in March 2022. This was revealed during WWE's SummerSlam event on Saturday. No actual reasoning, like proper cold hard reasoning has been given, but the theory is that WWE has released many people over the last year or so it's the kind of rumours are that the game is incredibly out of date.
You should just put one of those censored sort of filters over them, so whenever they appear they're like pixelated so you can't see who they are.
That would be good. There was a story many moons ago where Vince McMahon liked one wrestler, but he thought he was ugly. So he wanted to, whenever he was on screen, he wanted a blue dot to be placed over his face, which is quite harsh. And if I showed you this man, you would be like, that's not an ugly man. But Vince was not impressed at all.
What a maniac that guy is.
In other news, a follow-up to the GTA remaster story from last week, Kotaku, who originally reported the story, have now said that the game might be out in 2022 rather than later this year. It was originally reported by them that the PC release would be next year anyway, so I don't know if everything's going to be out next year or if this is going to have a knock-on effect, whatever. I mean, we still don't know if it's real or not, but that's what they're saying. A game we do know is real is Quake. Quake has been remastered and it's out right now. This was announced at QuakeCon last week. And they just shined it all up. It's 4K support, cross-platform, and there's a new expansion from Wolfenstein and Indiana Jones people, Machine Games.
Wow.
So I don't know if but we might have spoken about Quake before. I didn't grow up playing Quake. Did you? Was it anything?
I think it was the very first thing we played on our first PC when we got it.
Oh, well, but did you quickly then move on to adventure games? Or
well, that's the thing. I was always a bit of an we had a demo of it, so I was always a bit of a adventure game nerd. I feel like my tunnel vision with genres as a teenager meant like I missed out on some quite kind of sort of important years for the first person shooter genre because I was just too busy not being able to solve any of the puzzles in Discworld and Monkey Island and the like. That's really all that I played. I was just so mad for point and click games.
You haven't given the Quake remaster a go, have you?
I actually haven't. No, I've been on holiday since they announced this. So
that's a good enough reason, really, to not play Quake.
Sorry, I don't mean to sound so defensive.
Sorry, I'll never make small talk again. And your final information snack, Matthew, just in case you were wondering, Soulja Boy doesn't own Atari.
Why would I have thought he did?
Well, because of what Mr. Boy was saying. So I think it's just important to put that out there.
Did he say that he did own them?
I believe so, yeah. And Atari had to make a comment that, like, no, he doesn't.
Of all the things to boast about owning, modern Atari is not would be way down the list.
So those are your information snacks for this week, Matthew. So now let's get on to the meteor stories. Take it away, Hugh.
Hello, I'm Hugh Edwards. Working in news is exciting.
Yes, and it is a bit exciting this week. Headlines and Hot Takes is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we take you through the bigger news stories of the past 7 days. And this is, I suppose you would call it a rumour, although I am hesitant to call it a rumour. There may be a Saints Row reboot coming, Matthew.
Oh.
Well, and this is why I'm like, it hasn't been outright confirmed, but it's more or less been. So it's almost a confirmation.
Keighley said something, right?
Yes. So I think that's how it actually started. So I'll pull up the tweet here. Geoff Keighley took to Twitter and said, 5 days until at Gamescom, #opening night live on Wednesday. We are, quote, bossing it with our announcements this year, eyes emoji. See you live Wednesday at 11, blah, 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 the times of the opening night live. And he also tweeted this with a little video of rebooting, spray painted onto a wall with a fleur-de-lis. And the text is purple and white. And whilst maybe then you'd go, can you say that is totally Saints Row? You know, the bossing it, the reboot, like the fleur-de-lis. But then, I mean, yes, but also you can say for definite. Then Volition retweeted it, I think, with an eyes emoji. It's a Saints Row reboot. It's going to be revealed on opening night live. Now, an interesting one.
What is that? That's interesting.
Yes. Because, well, like when you think about it, Saints Row 4, how could there be a Saints Row 5 after that? You are the president of America. There are aliens involved. You have superpowers. Like they sort of took it to the nth degree. And where you go from that, I'm not too sure. They'd already turned it up to 11. So the rebooting part of it, I guess, but I don't know in what form this takes when it comes to a reboot, because there are things that I enjoy about Saints Row that I would like to see in a future Saints Row. But yeah, it's just the rebooting part of it that makes me a little, I'm not sure.
Because it's been a while since I've played Saints Row 1, but in my head, it's quite a different game to what it became, or rather, it hadn't necessarily settled on its tone.
No, not at all.
Back then, like the first one was like much closer to. It was just more of a straight someone who's having a go at doing a like GTA, because it either came out just before, or just after GTA 4, and it felt like someone just sort of filling that gap at the time, and then it wasn't until Saints Row 2 that it begins to get a bit more daft.
Like the first one is a proper GTA clone. The second one, it still has its roots in the more sort of serious tone, as far as I can remember. But it was Saints Row the Third where they properly just went, look, why are we trying to fight Rockstar in this when we can build an audience by still, like, Saints Row the Third is much more grounded in reality, and I'm hesitant to use that phrase, but it is more grounded in reality than the fourth one. But it's still ludicrous. It still has missions like, which is what I loved, like HTTP Deckers Die, which I think is just absolutely outstanding. Like it has ludicrous elements to it, but then the fourth one just went hell for leather. So it's just the like, when you take it to the degree that they did with 4, do you just go, well, look, let's pull it back a little bit and maybe go Saints Row the Third, where you are still in this city, driving cars around. There are farcical characters, but the world itself is pretty normal. Or do you go, how about we give this GTA thing a go again? Like, where, how far back do you go, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd be up for like dialing it back a little bit. You know, there is just a sort of simple satisfaction in the kind of the sort of straight GTA like, which I'd happily see them revisit. So I'm just being mesmerised by, I forgot how daft some of this footage was, which isn't ideal for the podcast listeners. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's sort of weird because it always was the kind of, you know, where GTA kind of got super sort of sophisticated. I like that sort of Saints Row really, really doubled down on the super silliness. But like I say, I think the kind of the characters, while they were introduced in the first game, weren't necessarily the sort of the lunatic versions of themselves. So do you think that there might be like, you know, do you think it'll be a reboot as in like the same kind of story, the same kind of setting? Or do you think it's like a, you know, do you think it'll be a slightly more kind of higher concept, a kind of, you know, big narrative reboot?
I don't know because, like, again,
which would you rather see?
Like, it's not like I have a great attachment to the cast of,
you know, like Johnny Gat or Bust.
Yeah, Johnny Gat is actually one of the least interesting characters. Like, there are, you know, I could rattle off a few names for you, and like, so they made somewhat of an impact, like a Kinsey or a Kilbane, or like there are some characters, I can't remember his name, but the voice modulated guy, like there are some characters that make somewhat of an impact, but there's nobody that is, I don't know, the great characters in video games. So right. I don't think it's like they could introduce a new cast characters, new narrative, etc. But it's just the serious roots of Saints Row that I don't want. Like, I to reiterate what you said, I like that Saints Row like dialed it up, the silliness. And the creativity in some of the missions, like, because they dialed up the silliness, it allowed them to be more creative when it came to the missions. And the missions weren't just, say, walk into warehouse, shoot all the baddies, and then leave. they were able to do missions like the text adventure Decker's Die mission. They were able to do the Streets of Rage kind of parody. Even the Killbane character, like there's a sort of a wrestling missions there as well. They were able to play with the format much more when they were hanging their hat on more daft kind of setup.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm definitely looking forward to more Saints Row. I'm looking forward to seeing whatever Geoff and developer Volition have cooked up here. I don't know. I'm a little bit cautious. The word reboot makes me a lot more cautious than if it was just a straight up sequel. I don't know.
It's kind of, it's been such a while, such a time since, there was a new Saints Row. I think maybe people expect the next thing to be a proper sequel. Or is it, I just don't really know what to make of Reboot. I guess that's more than just remaster.
Yes, yeah, no, you'd
think so, wouldn't you?
Well, it just feels like such a pointed word to use, and one that is recognized in media, be it games, films, whatever. Like a reboot is like, no, we're doing it again, and the other story isn't connected to this story. So if it's say the formation of the Third Street Saints again, but I don't know, maybe you're not the boss. Maybe you're actually a named character, and maybe there are
right
other cast of characters around you. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
because Reboot can be, Tomb Raider. Where you kind of, it's all the ingredients, but so radically different. I imagine it would still be an open worldy game. Maybe there's just an idea that, with this much of a gap, or, releasing a game with 5 on it, is that going to speak to people, or is it just better to start afresh?
There is definitely, again, probably across all media, like when you get to a certain point, you're adding too many numbers on it. Even look at the biggest entertainment property in the world in Marvel. Like they got to a point where they stopped putting numbers on things. Like Captain America, Winter Soldier. Like they just did, just stick a subtitle on it, because to somebody who's coming in late, a number at the end is much more scary than just a subtitle. A subtitle seems more inviting than 5, for example. Apart from Final Fantasy, which just, has 26 on it and just says, look, if you want to come in now, you can, whatever. But yeah, I suppose, look, we'll know an awful lot more about that on after this week, on Thursday night. Thursday night, presumably.
I must admit, I struggled to get excited for this opening night thing, because I saw Geoff Keighley tweet the other day, like, we're revealing an unlockable character in Monkey Ball, and you're like, really? Like that is not a tier of announcement that gets me buzzing. But if you could have any Sega character in a ball, which one would you like it to be?
Ooh.
See, we've fallen for his trap now. Everyone's talking about it. Rystar.
Rystar.
Because it's got, they've announced sold Yakuza Man.
I saw that, yeah, Kiryu
in a ball.
I think that actually worked. That generated some conversation. So, I don't know.
Well, that's but everyone just started inserting that ball into like existing Yakuza memes.
It's perfect. It's a match made in heaven.
I just don't know what else they've got that isn't already in a ball.
I would have thought they would have put an awful lot of characters in their balls at this stage.
Maybe because they got the ties with
We're giving this way too much oxygen. This Geoff
Listen, I'm just every week you decide what we're having hot takes on and what the headlines are. I just wanted to show that I do think about these things.
Matthew, have you done much thinking about Call of Duty lately?
Oh, I try not to, but what we got?
Well, Call of Duty Vanguard is real. It was always going to be real, but yes, it is. It was announced last week by Sledgehammer and Activision, I guess. However, there were some... look, it's still an Activision property, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if you spotted, but I heard somebody mention that there wasn't any mention of Activision in the trailer. So after that, I rewatched it. I was like, really?
They're trying to trick you into thinking like,
it's not.
Oh,
yeah,
I guess this is Call of Duty made by someone else.
And if you, at the very end where all the logos pop up, yes, Activision isn't there. And it's almost like there's a spot where Activision should be, but somebody has...
Interesting.
Quote unquote forgotten.
Or at least maybe they're just trying to treat it like this is just Call of Duty. This is like beyond publisher now.
Perhaps. But I mean, the first thing to talk about when it comes to Call of Duty. So there was a behind closed doors thing with press, I believe, for Vanguard. And Eurogamer reported that the studio head at Sledgehammer Games, Aaron Hallen, was asked about all the allegations at Activision Blizzard over the past month. He was always going to be asked, and Hallen said that the stories were, quote, simply devastating. He said, everyone, regardless of title, role, gender orientation, ethnicity, should be treated always with dignity, respect and equality. While we cannot comment on the lawsuit, what I can say is that as a team, we are committed to making sure all team members feel safe, welcome and respected. I think, did you see the thing as well about Sledgehammer? I don't know who they mentioned this to, but that they see themselves doing games other than Call of Duty as well. Like, listen, this is pure speculation, but I don't know if they're trying to jump or trying to kind of set themselves up to separate themselves from Activision and what's gone on. But I don't know. Anyway,
because their guy left. Their founder, their what's his name? Dan Schofield.
Schofield, yeah.
Left to set up the people who are making the PUBG
Callisto
horror game.
Protocol, yeah.
So, it can't be done.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Vanguard itself we were talking last week about how the rumours were that this was going to be set in World War II, and the rumours were sort of correct. This is post-World War II, but it is a sort of an alternate timeline where somebody is trying to carry on the Nazi party.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is quite ridiculous.
It's like, we've run out of war, so we have to imagine a new war for us to win in a game. And it's quite like the First War. It's like, did you enjoy winning World War II? Then try winning World War II too.
World War II plus. I don't know. We kind of talked last week about how I was a bit tired of games being set in this. You said, it's kind of stitched into the fabric of first-person shooters. Would the fake war? I don't know.
I mean, I'd say it gives you license to just conjure up some mad nonsense that would probably benefit a video game. There's a sort of sense of kind of not kind of colouring within the lines, I guess, but of kind of when you are working within something that exists, there is a certain sort of duty of care, to sort of to adhere. That they push it far already, but there's there is a natural limit on where these wars take place or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
So to just have kind of a bit more license, something that's kind of war flavored.
I mean, look at Wolfenstein. It has that. That's an alternate timeline. Hitler's still in it. There are
but it's slightly,
I mean,
there's something which is just like outrageous from the very beginning, and it's a little bit like having your cake and eating it to try and do that with this series. You can't be kind of like, respect to all the
but also
the
Mecha Hitler
and history, but that now we're going to have like, here's this like mad sort of Nazi plus mode.
Yeah.
I don't know. You gotta, with all these things, kind of got to see what they actually like do with it, and what they tell with it. I mean,
here's a question for you. Currently, are you more interested? And to be fair, we know a bit more about Battlefield, but right now, would you be more interested in Battlefield 2042 or Call of Duty Vanguard? Does it come down to Vanguard having a single player?
I do like a single player mode.
Yeah.
Like I don't play a lot of multiplayer these days. Plus the kind of, I don't know, that I've never gone in for as much the kind of the modern or the kind of future warfare variants as much. The kind of sort of silly sort of gadgetry and sort of, I don't know, that stuff hasn't ever clicked with me. I'm not to say like I'm like a mad sort of like, I feel like these sort of historical wars should be the place either, but I just of the games that I have enjoyed, from Call of Duty and Medal on or whatever, I think they're the kind of historical ones, or maybe the ones in like modern, bang on modern day, rather than say the future kind of appeal. So like Modern Warfare 1, I really, really love. But it's when it all becomes a little bit like robot dogs and stuff, I'm like,
A few other things that were outlined about the new Call of Duty is that the multiplayer is going to have 20 maps, which sounds like a lot to me. There's going to be a new mode called Champion Hill. So like Super King of the Hill? I don't know. There's going to be a zombies mode, which is taken care of by Treyarch. And Warzone is going to be getting a new map as well, tied into this, and it's going to be coming out on the 5th of November. So I should probably try playing more Warzone. I played Warzone once, got my ass absolutely handed to me, and then decided never to play it ever again. There's so many people like obsess over it, and so many like peers and people whose opinions I respect on things are like genuinely like really, really into it. As in they get excited about new maps and
oh my god, yeah, and particularly here where you're like, oh, it's a whole new thing, and this is basically what they're going to be playing for the next year, and it's just odd being on the outside of something like that and thinking,
it's any continuous video game. I just can't, because I have to play bits of everything, and if Warzone comes out and I play for a week and I go, oh yeah, then I leave it and I come back in 6 months' time, everyone is super gunman, and it's like, well, I guess that's me done, and I'm never going to play this again because I just can't get off the ground.
The conversations people have, like the depth they go into, are so like beyond my ability level. People are like, they have individual opinions on the strength of individual weapons. Oh, I hope they nerf this, or they hope they fix this, or whatever. Where for me, like, my going concern is literally like, can I be in this world for more than a minute without getting a bullet in my head? Yeah. Like I can't even get far enough into it to connect with, the culture around the game.
I'm the exact same.
It's terrible, isn't it? We haven't played the new Quake. We don't play Warzone. What the hell is this Weekspot for?
We like the single player. We like the stories. I like the stories.
The PC Gaming single player Weekspot. Our Weekspot is multiplayer.
And Matthew, oh, look, what's that ahead? It is a tech corner or a Steam Deck. Steam Deck is still coming at the end of the year, Matthew. So my question to you is, what are you looking forward to in 2021?
What, still?
Anything. Just, yeah. What's coming out at the end of the year that you're looking forward to?
James Bond, the film?
Is that this year, is it? I thought that was next.
Well, it was meant to be last April.
And then the
as in
COVID,
2020. They're just sitting on it somewhere. Someone has got a DVD on their shelf with a new Bond film on it. And they just haven't sent that DVD to the Odeon in Bath yet.
Is that confirmed 2021?
I think so.
Okay. Well,
yeah, the last time I looked.
And is that a day one for you there, go in, opening night?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, I love me a bit of James Bond. Games wise, I mean, you could say Deathloop, but that's because it's the only game which is coming out this year. Forza Horizon 5.
There aren't many. However, there have been some games out in the last week. So, let's talk about them, Matthew. Let's talk about the games that we've been playing over the last 7 days.
Show and tell. We can't afford a proper jingle. It's meant to be jingle.
Yes, Show and Tell is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we tell you about the video games that we've been playing over the last 7 days. And there have been a few games we've been playing over the last 7 days. I was going to say that have come out. This one isn't out yet. It's out now. If you're watching this, if you're watching or listening to this on the day the Weekspot comes out, you can also play the game.
Oh, I thought it was out on Wednesday.
Is it? Whenever. It's out this week. Matthew, you'll check that and tell the people. But myself and Matthew have played it over the last week, and it was both of ours, one of our most anticipated games of the year. Oh, Matthew, Psychonauts 2.
Psychonauts 2.
It's here. It's real. No, it's been, 15, 16 years since the original
2005
Psychonauts.
was the original.
2005 in America, 2006 here. We had to wait a whole 12 months. So obviously, there's going to be a couple of youngsters here watching this who are like, What is Psychonauts? Give me an elevator pitch for Psychonauts. So can you break it down?
Yes.
What it actually is?
Psychonauts is a 3D mascot platformer in the vein of like a Banjo-Kazooie or a Mario 64. It's quite traditional. If you strip away a lot of what's interesting about it, it's like a hub world that you explore. And that leads to smaller contained levels, which you also explore. It's packed full of collectibles. You jump around. There's some combat. So that's the structure. If you've played those older games, and they don't get made that often, but particularly 3D. There are plenty of 2D platforms these days, but there's not many people who make these kind of 3D kind of character-led platformers. Probably Ukulele was the last big one.
Yeah, God.
Hat in Time, maybe. But your point stands. They don't get made an awful lot. But that really, really undersells what's interesting about Psychonauts, and particularly Psychonauts 2, because on top of that, the world it's set in is this world of this sort of top secret sort of psychic sort of espionage organization called the Psychonauts. You are a young boy called Raz who has psychic abilities. In the first game, he runs away from the circus to go to a psychic summer camp where he uncovers a conspiracy. Then he zaps off on a rescue mission at the end of that game. This picks up basically 3 days later. So it's even though we've been waiting for it for ages, it's you really, if you've played the original game, you sort of slip right in. What's interesting about the Psychonauts is they are able to enter people's heads. So that's where those self-contained levels take place. You explore an overworld, you meet lots of characters, and some of their heads you go inside because you need to help them in some way or extract a secret from inside their head or a piece of information. And that means you have to navigate these landscapes based on characters' sort of psyches. And it is, that's basically an invitation for this game to sort of do whatever the hell it wants in these levels. And the appeal of the thing is it's just this like wildly inventive kind of like audio visual experience with a really interesting approach to storytelling, in that the levels kind of represent the characters who you are inside of, and you sort of learn about them and learn their life story and what ails them from kind of the level itself. I think is sort of the rough elevator pitch.
I think it is a bang-on elevator pitch, Matthew. I couldn't have said it better myself. Now, the thing I want to talk about first, because I think we mentioned it, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago when there was some Psychonauts flavoured story. And the slight worry that Psychonauts 2 wasn't going to play terribly well. And the reason I say that is because terribly well is a bit strong. But basically, the first Psychonauts, as a 3D platformer, because like, taking away like the creativity in the worlds, the level design, all that, taking that out of the equation for the first Psychonauts and just saying the quote-unquote moment-to-moment gameplay, it was meh. It was adequate. It was serviceable. The jump, however, in a 3D platformer, quite important. It was a bit floaty. There were depth perception issues. And I know you could say that's something that ails an awful lot of 3D platformers, but in Psychonauts, it did feel quite pronounced on occasion. I will say that I think Psychonauts 2, and look, it's like, it is 15, 16 years after the first one. So you would imagine video games have advanced enough that it would play better anyway.
Yeah.
But it is something that you can still get wrong in 2021. I think that this plays, I don't think it's the best platform in the world, but I think it plays quite well.
I think it plays really well.
Well, when I take the combat into account, which we can talk about in a second, I think, yes, it plays really well. I did run into depth perception issues still sometimes. Basically, in those moments where you have suspended platforms that are teeny tiny, there are still some issues. You didn't?
No, I didn't. I thought by 3D platforming standards, this was pretty excellent. I didn't really struggle with any of the platforming. And I think, maybe if there were bits where I did, the game is generally a lot more like generous with things like checkpointing and where it restarts you. Because in the original game, if you fell into the level abyss, that costs an entire life. And it had a life system, which was a huge pain in the ass. Where here it's like if you fall off, you lose a bit of health. There's also like no life system, so you can just keep whacking away at something until you get through it.
Maybe
that like has influenced how generally sort of smooth your progress is through this game. But I replayed Psychonauts 1 just before reviewing this, and there were bits in it where I was like, in Psychonauts 1 where I was screaming at the TV. Cursing its existence. Here, there was if anything, I thought this was quite easy as a platformer.
Yeah, I overall, yes, like the checkpointing is very, very generous. Even the life system or the health system is very generous in that, like each of your brains, each of your sort of health points has 4 individual health points in them. It's very generous. So like I don't like it. It doesn't happen loads, and I think for the most part, I think it plays very well. But there were just some occasions. But I think when you marry the combat with just the general platforming as well, I think that it becomes a far better game. Like I think the combat in this is like there are not tons of like strategy and tactics to it, but there it's way deeper than I remember. The first one.
There are actually like different enemy types in this one.
Yes,
which there sort of weren't in the original, and it had some, but it was largely like just the sensors. Here you've got 10 10 to 15 enemy types. They all have different abilities, kind of open them up, open up their weak spots. So like you actually have to juggle your, the different powers you have. Like, I don't know, it just had some sort of shape to it, I thought.
Definitely. Just the fact that, say, there are these enemies called doubts, which, and again, if you don't know, like each enemy is sort of connected to something to do with the mind. Like there are panic attacks, there are doubts, there are regrets, etc., etc. But the doubts are weak to fire. The sensors are weak to your psi blast, your little mind gun. So there is a level of strategy, some level of strategy to taking on different enemies. You can still, with persistence, you can still kill every enemy by just punching them, whatever, if you want. But to get everything out of the game, it does involve you switching between your abilities. And I love that. And that does outweigh what I'm about to say. But there is still, look, I don't really know how you get around this, but there is still some bit of fiddliness to the ability selection, which was way more pronounced in the first one because you had fewer buttons to play with, but it is still there. I don't know if did you find that at all?
Yeah,
or were you okay with it?
It's like a pain because you basically have 8 or 9 abilities, only 4 face buttons. A couple of them you always want.
Yeah.
I feel like you always want to have levitation.
Yeah.
Because it gives you a gliding jump. So that's a button gone. And then you always want to have probably telekinesis for throwing stuff around. I found quite important.
I'm the exact same. Those two are always there, yeah.
Yeah. But then so you end up having to do a fair bit of juggling. And there are levels where clearly themed around one of the powers. There's this sort of psychedelic music land, which is about, a lot of slowing time. So the time slow power there, is always on it. But in I'd say maybe the last third of the game, where it's mixing together all the enemy types, certain enemy types, basically need a power to counter. So those fights are a bit more well, I'll equip this to fight that guy. And once I've got rid of him, I'll have to equip this to get that guy. It's there. I'd say that's the place the game is the least neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I wouldn't say deal breaker. But
no.
It's the one hangover. I was I feel like they've solved pretty much every problem I had with the original, except that.
Yeah, the trade off is more interesting enemies, and it's one I'll take, but. Yeah. I don't know if there ever was a Psychonauts 3, maybe things I would be interested because I'm the same as you. Levitation and telekinesis always there. So if there was a way maybe to map those two powers to something else on your controller and then free up your bumpers and triggers for 4 other powers, then, that would be good. But I suppose talking about the powers, a lot of them are very similar to the very similar. A lot of them are the same as what you had in the first one. But the new powers, I thought, were generally good inclusions. I think you mentioned the slowing down one, the time bubble, which comes into play with enemies and for platforming. And that's great. And the mental connection where you that's for traversal, where you travel between little thought bubbles. Just and some of that depends on the levels you are in. But the levels themselves, and look, if you've played the first one, you could probably anticipate this anyway. But the levels and the worlds are just brilliant. And you can do that when you're jumping into people's brains, into their minds, of course. But you still have to do it. And I think, for the most part, Double Fine knocked it out of the park.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're absolutely amazing. It's kind of a combination of things. I think that there are sort of 2 types of level. There are ones which is kind of a mixture of just your kind of platforming and kind of combat with some mad visual concept. And then there are levels which kind of are a bit more like bespoke in terms of the gameplay, and kind of flip the concepts on their head, which is something that happened in the first game as well. But I'd forgotten like how good it is when you enter a level and it is just like completely distinct because of that particular challenge. So there's like it's sort of, you don't want to spoil all of the surprises in there, but there's like there's a level which is like a cooking game show, which has, it's sort of a bit like Overcooked. You're sort of, it's about like juggling different kitchen functions against the clock, and it still has the same controls as the other levels. But I love the, once you've had a couple of those levels, the game just becomes very so exciting because you're constantly looking forward to sort of seeing what like mad thing it does next. And like generally speaking, it does keep serving those mad things. I think maybe the first game had slightly like wilder tangents in it. But I think that the world design and general level design and what the game has you do in these levels is like exceptional, and it almost seems unfair to compare it to the first one, because if you put Psychonauts 2 up against 99% other games, then you will go, oh well, what they've done, what Double Fine have done here is just outstanding, like the creativity, the imagination. And yeah, we'll try and talk around some levels, because as part of the joy, I suppose, is going in and seeing what they've done. But I don't think it's rose-colored glasses, but I think the first one had it played around with the format a little bit more, like the Waterloo world in the first one. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of as well. There are just a smidge more examples like that. But that was because the Waterloo world was, it had sort of like, it was like you sort of shrunk into a tabletop board game, and there was an element of like playing pieces around, which was a bit out there. And there was a level set in an opera house in the first game, sort of a theatre musical sort of play being put on, and it was all about like adjusting the scenery and adjusting the production, and it maybe wasn't particularly like smooth to actually like play it, but the concept of this strange kind of play you're putting on was a bit more interesting. I mean, I say when this game like lands a couple of really big ideas, like the cooking show, and there's like a level where you're on like a bowling ball, which I liked a lot. I think they're just as good, but I felt like there was more sort of general kind of platforming in this. Agreed. No, the platforming is also better in this. So it's kind of I mean, yeah. I mean, it's still. I think the other thing as well, like a sort of strength of this game, which maybe impedes it a tiny bit, is I think the stories are like a lot more coherent and consistent. The story is 1,000 times better. Like the story, but I would say because of that, like there's maybe more like thematic coherence in the levels. Like the first game is kind of like oh holy shit, like this is crazy. Like every head is completely different. But then the story kind of feels like you're just someone who's going through a lot of random heads. Here, like again, without sort of giving it away, there's a lot more stuff about sort of the heads you're going into. Like there is kind of more of a link between them, and a sort of shared concern and sort of shared regrets. And because of that, there is some similarities. And like that is, on one hand, big thumbs up. The whole thing is just more rewarding as a result. But it also maybe limits them from just going like, here's something which you just simply couldn't see coming. There's nothing as mad as just like the milkman conspiracy in the first game, which was like you're in the head of a milkman trying to help him for like no it doesn't fit into the overall story at all, really. But it's a brilliant little moment, and so it's kind of slightly better behaved in that regard.
So yeah, again, it's got a weird sort of a trade-off, and I don't want to, like, I thought this was brilliant. I don't want to come across like I'm saying it's not, but the cast of characters in the first game are a bit more wacky, a bit more, and perhaps more memorable because their wackiness, and thus maybe their brains, the levels you go into, are a bit more wild, to your point. But the overall narrative in this is treated with far more care and is way more coherent, as you said, than the first one. Like, the story in this is good. It is, and what they do is they take some. I'm not like, the characters aren't po-faced. They are still quite mad in some ways, but it is. They give these people like real worries. They give them like relatable concerns, whatever those concerns seem to be. So they're definitely more rounded, the characters in this, and I think that the story benefits because of that, essentially. So yeah, much better story than the first one.
I say my one caveat with that is I didn't think the interns were quite as strong as the kids in the first game. Like,
yeah,
it's got this sort of weird structure where, like, the first act of this game is super tight and tells this quite like sort of fixed story about like you arriving at this place, meeting some people. They don't really get on with them. Something happens. They do get on with you. But then that means they're kind of done with for the rest of the game. And the rest of the game is sort of about something else. And that happened a bit in Psychonauts 1. Like, the last act of that game doesn't have a huge amount for the kind of, the kids kind of vanish in that too. But here I felt like, there was this rush of new people. I didn't really get to know them that well. And then they kind of didn't do much for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Which,
agreed.
Like, again, is, I think, a side effect of it being like a bit more sophisticated as like an overall production, is that like there aren't individual bits of weirdness as much that I think the first game had. I mean, if anything, I kind of like that because both games have a very clear identity. They both work. Like, I don't think it's a case of like, oh, is this one better than this one? Like, I actually think, they probably balance out as like great companion pieces with very distinct things to say and very distinct approaches, which, is good because a lot of sequel design feels like you're kind of replacing a previous game. And this is just like, it's just a mechanically better version, but with ideas that are different, and and you need to experience them, and
more mature, I suppose. Like,
and fun, but funny though.
Oh yeah.
Like, it really. I mean, that when I was writing my review of it, I had to actually put in a bit where I felt like I'm probably making this sound more worthy than it is. Like, as smart and sophisticated and sort of emotionally mature as it is, it's also just like a Tim Schafer joke factory. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, that like the number of like NPC one-liners that I, laughed out loud at, or things you see where you're just like, oh, that's like the I keep coming back to the cooking level, but this cooking level is just like 30 minutes of just a non-stop food jokes, and quite sinister with it at the same time. There's this like sinister edge to the whole thing. It's like lots of very cute foods, sort of celebrating that they're about to be like murdered horribly in this game show. I thought it was really, really funny. I also thought, again, not to sort of spoil it, I thought the bit in the kind of where you sort of rewire the person's brain in the sort of towards the sort of start of the game, where you connect these sort of thoughts to kind of implant new ideas, was just this just incredible comic concept that like it was just like a toy. It's like here's a joke toy for you to play with for like 10 minutes. Yeah, I was like really, really impressed with so much of this game.
It's very good. It is.
Yeah.
It's a very good game that the people watching or listening to this should play. And you can on Game Pass.
Easily Double Fine's best game since Psychonauts 1.
I would agree.
Like, and you know, it's a big anniversary, isn't it? Like 20 years of the studio or something, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
You know, and it really does feel like just their most polished, consistent work. A great showcase on Game Pass.
No extra
charge. This is
charge.
a real Game Pass winner if you're on Game Pass.
This is even like, you know, if it wasn't on Game Pass, it would be like I don't know, we don't have a rating here, but like a buy, but like, you know, it's a definitely play it.
I loved it. I thought it was
really good.
I thought it was great.
So we are going to take a very quick break and we will be back to talk more video games right after this.
If you love online shooters, you should listen to Ultimate Audio Bang, Rock Paper Shotgun's fortnightly podcast. Every second Friday, I, Ed Thorne,
and I, Imogen Beck-Helling, chat about the latest news in Shooterland. We go in depth on Apex, Warzone, and more in our weekly talking points.
And we also tell you about the silly player names we come across.
I once played Valorant with Joey Tribbiani.
Subscribe to Ultimate Audio Bang on your preferred podcasting app, or listen to us every second Friday on rockpapershotgun.com.
Welcome back, dear viewer, dear listener, to the PC Gaming Weekspot. The next video game that we're going to talk about, a game I know, Matthew, you played a little bit over the last week. I have played it to completion, and that video game is 12 minutes. That video game is 12 minutes. Ha ha ha. It's a time loop game, you see. So how this works, if you haven't been keeping up, because this was first revealed... Jesus, Matthew, can you help me? Like, it feels almost like a decade. It was revealed a long time ago.
Was it that far? I thought it was like 4 years ago or something.
Was it? Oh, I feel like this has been around for
because time is like fucked at the moment.
Well, that is true. But this is, and I'll just point out, if you're watching this, the footage is quite non-spoilery. So yeah. This is a time loop top-down adventure game, essentially, where the loop lasts for 12 minutes. And in those 12 minutes, like regardless, it'll just, like, what's it called? Outer Wilds. When it reaches that point, it'll just loop back around. And... it's an adventure game. So you have to, within that loop, you have to grab the items that you need to grab and put them in the place where they need to go, or have the dialogue interaction with the character that you need to do. And you won't be able to complete it in one loop. You will, it's sort of, you know, you'll have a loop where you'll gather information and then you might burn that and then take that information into the next loop, so on and so forth. The other hook of this as well is it has a star-studded Hollywood cast of Willem Dafoe, James McAvoy, and Daisy Ridley. But I'll talk about that in a while. Because the thing that stands out to me with 12 minutes is the 12-minute time loop, shock horror, but also the fact that is such a hindrance on this game. Like, other games of this ilk have, I don't know, the loop's duration doesn't feel as restrictive, right? Whether that's because in Outer Wilds you go exploring a larger world, or something like The Forgotten City, which its time loop is very forgiving. In this one, the margin of error is teeny tiny. So if you, for example, right, if you know that a certain event is going to happen 5 minutes in, and you have to grab whatever it is, you have to grab 4 items before that event, and you grab 3 items, you forget to grab that 4th item, then you won't know that until the 5 minutes have elapsed, and then the time loop stops because somebody kills you or whatever. I'm trying to talk around it. And that's incredibly frustrating because like a character could ask you for an item and you could, in your head, you could be like, oh, it's in the other room. Just let me grab it. And then they'll be like, no, fuck you. And then kill you. And it is, it's incredibly restrictive and it becomes a massive pain because of that. Like I know you've only played
but there's like no rewind function.
No, there's no rewind. You are so like if you burn 4 or 5 minutes, then and you've forgotten that item that you need, then you sort of have to just burn that time loop, and thus you've wasted 4 or 5 minutes. And that's fine once, that's fine twice, but when it's just over and over and over again. And because of other reasonings, it isn't all just being forgetful and leaving an item behind. Because it's a bottle episode of a TV show. The whole thing happens in effectively 3 rooms in a small little flat. So there isn't much room to go, and you are doing the same things over and over. Do you know what I mean? Like you know that success means you have to say at the start of a loop, I have to ring this character, I have to grab a cup, and I have to what blah blah blah. Again, I'm going to not spoil puzzle solutions. And then you forget one thing, so you have to go, oh shit, right, I have to do that all over again. And it becomes a real pain. Like, I do. You haven't put loads of time into it.
I've only played like 90 minutes of it, I think. So, like, I'm at a point where...
Did you find that? Did you find even an hour and a half in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like, even though there's not much you can really do in the apartment, it's about like when you do any particular action is kind of more important. And already, even after 90 minutes, I find it a little bit like I'm waiting, it's like, all right, this is the bit where I get into the cupboard and wait this out for like 5 minutes or whatever. Where, I just keep thinking, in Hitman, I would save at this point and then I'd try the 5 things that I want to try at this particular point rather than, I've got to go through all this malarkey again. I do like how the game, like, sort of suggests solutions or kind of seeds, ideas. There are subtle things in the dialogue, where they sort of reference certain things which get you thinking about particular bits of the apartment in a certain way. And you think, oh, okay. And then that gets you, that gets your mind going, well, maybe if I did this and this. But I think the actual act of that experimentation, because there is so much waiting and there is so much, you have to follow these 15 steps because you want to do something else with step 16. Like, that's a huge pain in the arse, and that is like a huge flaw with the game.
Something Alice brought up in her review was that she spoke to the developer, and the developer said, the game is about empathy, and you will be, you won't think that anyone in this game is an outright monster, so on and so forth. And I think, you'll want to dance with your wife and you'll do whatever. But the thing is, no, because time is of the essence. I have only 12 minutes to make sure I get everything right here. And I never, in my time playing the game, apart from the very first loop, where I, felt like I would do what the game was telling me, get a feel for what the actual loop is meant to be without my tinkering with it. I never pissed about with things. I never had needless conversations with characters because I had to get to the bottom of whatever the mystery was.
Yeah. The weird thing, and this might just be where I currently am with the story and like roughly where I get to before I kind of mess it up and die or whatever, is that like a weird downside of this is that, as you keep repeat losing, generally in the same way, a lot of this game does involve you just watching two people get brutalized quite a lot. And it grinds you down a bit. You know, you're kind of like, oh man, like, you know, like, so I'm currently trying to work out where, you know, if I'm in a cupboard, what that does. But I haven't really worked out what that might mean for the solution. But for playing it, it means I basically, you know, watch quite an unpleasant home invasion over and over again. Yeah. And not to be like too hand-wringing about it. I mean, I've seen far worse in films, but there is something about sort of quite wearying, I guess, about that.
The story, I will say, if you do have it in you to finish and see this out, the story goes places by the end. Places that are... I don't know.
I heard that it gets a bit wild.
It gets very wild.
But I'm kind of into, like, again, so I get the impression that your experience and perception of this game changes based on just where you are in the story and where you are, like how much you've played it.
Yeah.
I will say where I currently am, I find it slightly jarring in that, like, it almost has three different kind of tones to it, because you've kind of got James McAvoy doing the man in a time loop, which has kind of got a slight comic edge to it, as these things tend to, of like that, oh my God, this is crazy, but also it's really stressful and unpleasant for him. But there's like a hint of humor in the way he kind of constantly respawns and the kind of frustration of dealing with a time loop. Then you've got Daisy Ridley, who's kind of, at this point of the story at least, you know, is kind of like the straight guy in the whole thing. Yeah, she's just doing like a domestic drama. And so her tone is quite different. And then you've got Willem Dafoe, who's just this like agent of I was going to say agent of chaos, but it's more just like a blunt instrument who comes in and brutalizes these two people. Like, I don't really feel like they exist in the same universe at the moment. They feel very, like, you know, they almost feel like they're in three different games to me.
So I will say, as someone who's seen it out, it does come together.
Right.
Now whether, I mean, I don't know. I didn't think the ending. I don't know. It's such a shame. I was really looking forward to this. I love a bit of McAvoy. I really time loop games. They're in vogue at the minute. I just think that this is a lot more miss than hit. I think you've brought them up, the cast. I think they do a fine job. I would say that, you know, especially when, like, this isn't a Naughty Dog game where you can see every single wrinkle on a character's face. It's top down, so you need to be big, and perhaps the actors could have been bigger. Willem Dafoe, as you would expect, is fine, but I don't know. Do you think you'll see it?
I think it's odd that it's an American story, you know, set in America, but they've cast two Brits, because, you know, whatever you think of them as actors, I don't know. They're both James McAvoy and maybe more so Daisy Ridley are doing kind of like fake American voice, that kind of, I'm an American, you know, which I always
is James McAvoy in the rooms?
I always find distracting, like fake. It kind of.
Why not just make her English and him Scottish, and Willem Dafoe can be Willem Dafoe?
Like cast Americans. I don't know. I just think it's odd. Like, particularly her. She's like, it just sounds like me doing an American accent.
But yeah,
that's an interesting choice.
Do you think
again? I think we've maybe talked about this here before. Like, I find the whole this has got famous actors from films, so it will be good. A bit bogus in video games. I think the actual craft and art of voice acting is like suitably different from straight screen acting. That it gets you promotional buzz and it feels expensive, but is it necessarily right?
Well, as I said, like on film, you have mannerisms, you have facial expressions, especially in a game like this where you don't have that. So it's an entirely different discipline.
Yeah, and it also, like, I just think there are slightly too many variations of what can happen for the game to keep up. And when it stumbles, it's like really obvious. I tell you, actually, and this isn't so much that, but once when the foe is turned up, I don't think James McAvoy sounds panicked enough.
Yeah.
Which may sound like a bit of a niche complaint, but you're literally tied up on the floor and he's like, "What are you doing? What's happening?" And you're like, there's literally a guy who's come into your apartment. He's got you tied up on the floor. I mean, I'd be a bit more worried if I was you.
I ran into, not loads, but I did run into issues where, for example, I, as James McAvoy, told my wife, Daisy Ridley, to, like, there's a cop coming to the door, don't open the door. And then there's a knock on the door a minute later and she goes, "Who could that be?" Or words to that effect. And it's like, I just told you, it's Willem Dafoe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like, when they announced this, I was really excited for it. I thought I love time loop stories. I love that kind of structure. I love filmic thrillers. I think it's really interesting people try and do stuff in that space. But at the same time, you were like, in your head, you have some kind of obvious sort of pitfalls that those kind of stories can stumble into. And I think this kind of, from what I've played so far, this kind of does. More mechanical than narrative, just in terms of the amount of repetition, like even in just this opening stretch, to try out a new thing. I guess they kind of have to do that because otherwise the game would be half an hour long, because you just make a mistake, rewind 20 seconds, keep changing it till you made the right decision. But as it is, it's, I don't know, just feels a little rough. But again, it's on Game Pass, so give it a go if you're interested. I was looking forward to it. Sadly, it most certainly didn't live up to the expectations I'd built in my head. But hey ho, Psychonauts 2, very good. So those are the games that we've been playing over the last week. So now it's time to play a different kind of game, a game we like to call Mystery Steam Reviews.
It's time for Mystery Steam Reviews. Yeah.
Yes, Mystery Steam Reviews is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where I, Colin Mahern, and he, Matthew Castle, test the knowledge of one another via Steam reviews that are mystery. The rules are as follows. Both I and Matthew bring 3 Steam reviews to the MSR arena, but we omit the name of the game associated with each review. Our opponent must correctly guess the game attached to each review. 1 correct answer equals 1 point. While both of us have 90 seconds on each MSR, we both also have help in the form of 3 lifelines. These lifelines can be used at any stage during battle, and they also pause the 90-second timer. Each lifeline, however, can be used once and once only, and they are as follows. Publisher, where the hot seat haver learns the publisher of the game. Second opinion, where a second review is given to the fiery chair sitter. And genre, where the genre of the game is revealed to the one with the warm arse. The theme this week, very easy to explain, Matthew. Don't think I need to go into it in great detail, but I and Matthew had to choose 3 games each that are either set on the moon or have a moon level. Simple as that. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small genre again.
It is a surprisingly small genre. Didn't think this one was going to be as small as it is.
Yeah, so I imagine we're going to step on each other's toes a lot.
Perhaps.
Will that make for a good episode? Let's find out.
Let's find out indeed. Matthew, your first Mystery Steam review is as follows. Likes. Lots of high quality content to do, especially for a free-to-play game. Big immersive planets to explore and get lost in. Both PvE and PvP modes are fun. Dislikes. No in-game guild finder, hard to keep track of quests, menus are not good in general. And that's from, I didn't spot this when I put it in for some reason, XXX Fantasy. It is recommended 955.1 hours on record, 103.1 hours at time of review. Matthew, your time starts now.
Right. Lots of high quality. I mean, this sort of makes me think a little bit of Destiny 2, but I don't know if that's a free-to-play game, because I haven't kept up with it. I know they keep changing the model of the game. So let's park Destiny 2, because it feels like like the time played suggests it's a massive... Oh, Gale, could it be Warframe? That is free-to-play, and very like Destiny. And that definitely... Because that's set in our solar system, it's all like Mars and Saturn. Do you go to the moon in Warframe? I think you do. Do you go to the moon in Destiny 2? The wizard came from the moon. That's what old Dinklage said. Do you remember? That wizard came from the moon. Oh, look at this. Poker face. I know one way to fix this. I could just ask for the publisher.
Okay, pause the timer at 21 seconds. I will remind you, Matthew, please.
Oh, pause the timer
Please
and then
ask me to pause the timer. I don't want people to fucking panic. Matthew, your publisher...
So, imagine if Chris Tarrant had that level of contempt for his audience.
Your publisher is... Okay, so I'm going to try and read this. It's a difficult one to pronounce. Bungai. Bungiai.
Interesting.
Bungiai.
Well, that's you screwed.
Bungie.
You've tried very cleverly. I should add to disguise it.
It's Bungie. It's Bungie. Restart the timer.
Bungie. This has to be Destiny 2.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
Matthew Castle. Excellent use of publisher. The correct answer is Destiny 2. Matthew, could I have my first mystery Steam review, please?
This version has quality of life additions like saving, a difficulty select, even a choice between classic and streamlined pogo controls. But I just wish it was easier to recommend, because you got to man up through a tough as nails Capcom NES hard game. I think that's referring to like an era of like difficulty. Like this is NES hard. This is Capcom NES hard. That's from Beowulf.
Some excellent usernames.
He recommends it with 10.1 hours on record.
Okay, starting the time now. All right. So there are two things I take from this. One is the choice between classic and streamlined pogo controls and a tough as nails Capcom NES hard game. It's interesting you've gone for this because I very nearly did. I think this is DuckTales remastered because old Scrooge McDuck has a pogo stick. The game was made, or well, it was published by Capcom. I don't know if they made it. DuckTales remastered. You go to the moon. I think I'm just going to say DuckTales remastered, Matthew.
It's bold. Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
So, you honed in on pogo stick? Capcom NES hard? Did I put the actual publisher of the game in a mystery Steam review? Would have been bold. You feel it's DuckTales Remastered? The correct answer is DuckTales Remastered. I was going to I couldn't put this because it gave the game away too much, but another review I found that made me laugh was it just said, this game got me into all kinds of wild DuckTales themed hentai. I mean, that feels like someone who's already into hentai. That isn't like, you don't play DuckTales and go,
your eyes are open to a new world.
I want to see that duck committing all kinds of obscene acts. I wouldn't say it's a natural gateway into that world. I would say you're already in that world, and it maybe gave you like a new tag for your search box.
Matthew, your second Mystery Steam review is as follows. This sequel is not just a video game, but a lesson in game design. Exploration, humour, set pieces, narration, atmosphere, difficulty, all these aspects are balanced with the care and love that only legendary developers have. As it results, I think is what they mean. As it results... what?
Oh my god! What's wrong, Chris? You're right.
Sorry, the question was worded poorly. I'm gonna reword there. It results in a game that never gets dull, repeats itself, or stumbles the player with overly difficult puzzles. More than recommended, almost mandatory, and that's from Jipalipa Orange Wedge. It is recommended 14.8 hours on record. Matthew, your time starts now.
My god. It goes to the moon. It's a lesson in game design. Humour, that seems key. Set pieces, atmosphere, difficulty. Only legendary developers have. Doesn't have difficult puzzles. It's almost mandatory. I feel like there's a lot of terms there which are super vague, so please stop the clock. Yes?
Yes.
And give me my second opinion.
Okay. The second opinion of this Steam review. It gets kinda boring. The jokes are repetitive. The story has a bunch of twists that simply make the game longer, but that's kinda it. I can't seem to get myself to finish the game. I just lose all interest. Played the co-op part a little. That seemed kinda fun. But overall, I wouldn't recommend. Don't trust British people. 102, restarting the timer now.
Don't trust British people. What the fuck does that mean? Oh my god, the co-op thing. Because I thought this might be Wolfenstein, but that doesn't have a co-op element. That goes to the moon. A game that goes to the moon with a co-op that British people like. British people. What game have we overrated that lets you go to the moon?
The quote is, don't trust British people.
Yeah. Stop the clock.
Okay.
Give me the genre.
Seconds. Stopping the clock at 22 seconds. Matthew uses his genre. The genre of this is a puzzle platform video game. A puzzle platform video game. Restarting the clock, 22 seconds.
Oh, God.
No.
A puzzle platform game that goes to the moon. Oh, my God. British people. Oh, my God. I can't believe I've wasted 2 clues. I can't. I've got to... Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, I can't even think of a single puzzle platformer game. Let's go. Oh, it's just... Doom.
So, the first review mentioned how it was, only legendary developers could do this. It mentioned it was a lesson in game design. It said levels, exploration, humour, atmosphere. It said that there weren't overly difficult puzzles.
Oh, you fucker! It's Portal 2. It's Portal 2.
The genre you used was a puzzle platform video game.
It's Portal 2, isn't it?
The second opinion mentioned the co-op.
Oh,
it also mentioned
Wheatley. It's frickin' Portal 2.
The correct answer is Portal 2.
Oh, you see the moon.
You go to the moon. You can shoot a portal to the moon and go to it.
Do you go to the moon?
Yeah.
I thought you just saw the moon.
You can shoot a portal and
Oh,
you end up in the moon.
what an absolute shiter.
My commiserations, Matthew.
Oh, I always get fucked by Portal 2 reviews. You always go for Portal 2. There was that terrible one where it's like being in an Apple store.
Oh yeah, there was that.
Oh, but we won't go into that because a lot of people got cross the last time. I got cross about that review.
Matthew, could I have my second Mystery Steam review, please?
If you slap players with a time limit, you could just as well take all your art, map designs, notes, and emails, just grab everything and throw it all into the trash because you're forcing the players to just rush through in the most efficient way possible. It says stock, they do not recommend it, and this reports no hours on record.
Time starts now. That's a funny trick. How did they do that?
Well, I can explain it, but I'll explain it after the fact.
A time limit. A time limit. Map designs, notes, emails. Because with the mention of emails, I was thinking maybe like a prey, but the time limit aspect. Pausing the timer at 1 or 3. Matthew, could I have my second opinion, please?
Yeah, this isn't doing anything for me. It's tedious, repetitive, frustrating. Similar reasons why I'm not remotely interested in speedrunning. The time limit is just completely antithetical to what immersive sims are all about. Slow, methodical exploration.
103, restarting the timer now. Immersive sim? I don't remember a time limit in Prey. But that is all I can think of. Now, I didn't play the DLC. Which I think was called Moon Crash, actually, when I think about it. Is this Prey? Genre would be useless, I think. Because it'd just be like first-person shooter. Pause the timer, 25 seconds. Matthew, could I have my, what's it called? Publisher, please.
The publisher is...
Just make sure. Make sure you get the pronunciation correct as well.
It's Bethesda.
Prey. Chris?
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
So?
It's Wolfenstein.
Is it Prey? You think this sounds like an immersive sim? The second opinion.
Oh, yeah,
Also immersive sim.
Must be Prey.
Where do we stand on the subject of expansions?
So this is Moon Crash, or Moon, whatever it was called.
Well...
Oh, is it not? What is this? Do you want to go to break, Chris, or... What's happening?
The correct answer is Prey Moon Crash. Is that... I can't remember what we said on the subject of... Because it's not... I thought it... In my head it was a standalone. I just looked it up and it isn't. It is just a DLC in the game. But do we have to name DLCs? Because it's specifically Prey Moon Crash.
Well, we typically don't do DLC, because... Like, was this review just on the Prey Moon Crash?
Prey Moon Crash has its own page. See, the reason it doesn't have a time is because I don't think DLC pages have individual time, because it gets folded into the overall page.
Oh.
Listen, I'm going to give it to you because I think you got it. You knew what it was. You said Prey because it incorporates Moon Crash. I'm going to let you have it.
Thank you, Chris. That's very, very kind of you.
Good luck editing that bit. I would maybe keep in that conversation so people can appreciate how magnanimous I am.
That will probably stay in. Matthew, would you like your third and final Mystery Steam review? Because you're getting it now. What a disgusting disgrace. Having extensively played the real version as a child, I can say without hesitation that this is trash. The control is terrible, not fluid like the 35-year-old game. This is exactly like what Disney does by remaking their classic films with inferior, cranked-out rehashes which sully the original. And that's from Fatal Overdose, which is quite... How could I make that nice? Fatal Lover Dose. It is, I think that's meant to say not recommended after 0.1 hours on record.
I played 0.1 hours. It's a disgusting disgrace.
And I love it. Matthew, your time starts now.
I mean, this feels like DuckTales Remastered because you did that whole thing like, oh, I thought I was going to do this one myself and then I decided against it, which feels like classic. Like, you can't, was it bullshitter, or is it shitter? I don't know. Something involving shitting. And you can't do it. Can I have the genre?
No, you don't have any lifelines.
Oh, no! It's not the clock. I want another lifeline. Oh boy. I mean, the Disney reference and the time, the age, the 35 years puts this firmly in the place of like DuckTales. I don't think it was that long ago. Unless it was something earlier than that also goes to the moon. But I don't think there is. I just think, your instant recall of it earlier on was too fast. You tried to disguise it. I don't think you did a very good job of it. Of course, if it isn't this, I'm going to look like a real prick now, but I'm going to say DuckTales Remastered.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
So, 35 years old. There was a mention of Disney in there as well. This is what Disney does with their films. This person called it a disgusting disgrace. You have ended up on DuckTales Remastered, all while insulting me as well, which is an interesting tactic to take.
I didn't insult you.
You did. You said I did a horrible job of, if I was hiding it earlier.
Unless that was like the old, unless you deliberately did a bit of a stinking job to like, set me up for this now tragic downfall. Well, not tragic, deserved.
Matthew, I can tell you that the correct answer is DuckTales Remastered.
Yes, I knew you knew it. I knew you knew it. Oh, I was going to do this one. I was against it.
I was trying out a different tactic because we all the tactic normally employed by either of us is, ooh, what is it? What is it? So I was like, no, I will let him know that
It's Duck.
Duck Stories.
DuckTales Remastered. And everyone's like,
no.
So, oh yeah, I saw that and I wrote it and then I decided not to do it.
We'll try a different tactic next time.
Nice try, Fibber.
Matthew, let's see your review of Portal 2. Matthew, could I have my third and final Mystery Steam review, please?
Rather than laughing at a series of unfortunate events, you are constantly wondering how the F did that happen. If you are getting hit by a monster, they will then rapid fire you over and over again while you lay unconscious. So it might as well be a single hit to kill you. The moles are unnecessary. Says Spidey. Not recommended with 7.8 hours on record.
Time starts now. Okay then. The big thing from this is that final sentence, surely. The moles are unnecessary. Because the rest of it is fairly non-committal, monsters, blah, blah, blah. And there was a big deal made out of the moles in Spelunky 2. I know Spelunky 2 goes to the moon. But while we're here, Matthew, I'm going to pause the timer, 57 seconds. Could I have my genre, please?
Your genre is platform video game.
Restarting the timer, 57 seconds now. Surely Spelunky 2. I'm pretty sure the moles were introduced in the second one. I'm almost positive it goes to the moon. I'm going to say Spelunky 2. Chris.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
So you're thinking this is largely nondescript, but the moles point you to Spelunky 2. The correct answer is Spelunky 2. 3 for 3.
Get in.
And I frickin' doomed it.
Everyone loves a Doom.
Oh, it's embarrassing though, isn't it?
Everyone
you can't
loves
shit the bed
Doom.
harder than
Doom.
Than saying Doom to it's a co-op. That's a platform game. I've got to. I'm just going to read every Portal 2 review because I never get that right. My brain, for some reason, just never thinks Portal 2.
I mean, I suppose it can actually fit into a lot of categories. I was going to say I could just choose category. There are a lot of categories it could fit into. But anyway, that is Mr. Steam Reviews for this week. So now let us light the poor man on fire once more. Yes, Burning Questions is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we take your burning questions, your correspondence, your emails. You can email us at any stage throughout the week, weekspot at rockpapershotgun.com, and then we may read out your email on this very show. So Matthew, we start off Burning Questions this week with somebody different, actually. We start off this week's Burning Questions with Doug Diamond.
Oh.
Doug gave us $20 super chat during the last YouTube premiere of
we'll be eating the good meat tonight.
Big time. And Doug said,
whatever that means.
Been off a few weeks, but managed to catch this one. Cheers, lads. And then Doug emailed in his actual question. Doug said, sadly, I don't know how to be concise, so my burning question had to be via email. What game would you say is criminally underrated? Talk about the GTA soundtracks had me thinking about Brutal Legend, which had the best game soundtrack of all time. Was the decision to have the boss battles be RTS weird and bad? Sure, but the rest of the game was so good it didn't matter. The writing was good, the art direction was excellent, and I want to drive that car around and listen to rad metal all day long. Reviews were wrong. That game rocked. From Doug. Thank you very much, Doug, and thank you very much for your super chat as well. Very kind of you. And yeah, thank you for your email. Matthew, underrated, criminally underrated video games.
Oh.
I mean, how do you define, first of all, how do you define a criminally underrated video game? Is it underrated by the general public via sales? Is it critically? Is it a combination of both? What's your definition of that?
I guess it would be something which is probably more like considered to be bad by like popular opinion, but you think is good rather than the sales thing. I don't know. Criminal, because like there's lots of games I love that I don't think sold particularly well. But I wouldn't say they were like underrated. They were just ignored. In terms of games that were like scored bad, but I really liked. I should have prepped a better answer for this one. I always thought, again, I think it sold okay, and I don't think it was like horribly. I think it's got a decent Metacritic, but I always thought Castlevania: Lords of Shadows the first one,
Right.
was like really a standout game of that generation. Like I absolutely love that game. I thought it was just superb. The sort of God of War kind of combat, but also just the amazing art design, the setting of it. There was so much, like it was huge. It was like this 20-hour sort of single player action game. I got completely kind of wrapped up in it. Thought it went some really awesome places. Had like made by a Spanish team whose name escapes me, Mercury Steam. I thought it had like a bit of kind of Guillermo del Toro kind of artistic stuff in its DNA. Like it was a really just distinctive, excellent game. But people played it enough for there to be a sequel, and people rated it. But I feel like it's not talked about as like an all-time great, where I think it maybe is. I genuinely love that game. But maybe that's because I'm criminally overrating it.
Or maybe you're just rating it. It is so difficult to...
What do you criminally underrate?
Or what do I think is great that is criminally underrated?
Yeah. Sorry, yes. What do you rate? Yeah.
See, it's so difficult because while you were talking, I just had a quick look there to see what its Metacritic was, because for some reason a game popped up into my head and its Metacritic is like 73, and it's like,
right.
That's good.
That is
so,
good.
So can I say that is criminally underrated? But then if I looked up Castlevania Lords of Shadow, would that also have a similar Metacritic?
I think Lords of Shadow's in the 80s.
Jesus. Right? Yeah, it's 85.
Yeah,
and that's underrated.
No, that's what I was saying. Like I don't think there is anything I rate that. I don't think there is anything that is like criminally underrated that I'm really, really into. But like that one, that's easily a strong 9 for me. Lord of Shadow one.
So you think not criminally underrated, just like 5 points, just a teeny bit underrated.
What was recently? What did
I'll say the one that came into my head anyway.
Yeah.
It was Second Sight. I thoroughly enjoyed that game. I loved messing about with the powers. Like I came to it later, and I never played PsyOps. So in that battle, I was certainly Team Second Sight. And I just really enjoyed the kind of story setup. I enjoyed the powers. Just thought it was really a fun game. And it seemed like you could mess around with the powers somewhat as well, because there was, you could pick up items, a little bit Psychonauts-y. You could pick up items, but then I think you could also like hop on those items and ride them. I just thought it was a fun game. Again, I don't think it's one of the best games of all time, but I had fun with it.
Yeah, it's tricky finding things everything I'm thinking, I keep typing it in, they're all like 80s on Metacritics. Recently, Hand of Fate, well, not recently, it was a few years ago now, but Hand of Fate 2, I thought was absolutely brilliant. And I don't think I think the studio closed because it didn't do well enough. But even though I think it's got like a Metacritic of like low 80s, that's absolutely amazing. The kind of RPG which you play on like tarot cards that are dealt to you by this sort of storyteller, / weird sort of tarot master person. That I always thought was really great. And the sequel was just such a brilliant improvement on the first. Again, it's another 80. I thought last year, Gears Tactics was absolutely fantastic. I thought that was like genuinely brilliant. One of my favorite games of last year. Did many people play it? I don't know. Hard to gauge really. But as a kind of a newcomer to the kind of turn-based sort of tactics space, I thought it did just arrived really fully formed, really confident. Got me really excited. I hope they make more of that because I thought it was so good. But yeah, there's not many like real guilty pleasures.
I mean, another one that's popped up into my head, and again, I've checked it to see if it is criminally underrated. It's a 79 on Metacritic, which again I feel like every answer we've given you, Doug, isn't correct, but I love Call of Juarez Gunslinger. I think that's a game I properly love. I thought the setup of somebody telling you the story and making alterations to their story, because they're telling the story, you're playing through the story that they're telling. They're making alterations to their story as you're playing. So they'll go, yeah, then he came up against 4 guys. No, wait, it was 8 guys. Get 4 more enemies pop up. Yeah, love that game. The only Call of Juarez I like, really. Yeah, I mean, we've given you games that are quite
I feel like
well rated.
Earn that $20.
Yeah. Beastwick. So yeah, thank you very much, Doug. Beastwick gave us a super chat, $20. Thank you very much, Beastwick. Very kind of you.
Oh,
Beastwick said, no burning question. I just wanted to one-up a Mog this week.
That's great. That's what I'm all about. People just competing for our affections and not asking for nothing in return. That's just a dream. What a dream gig. I mean, that's sort of the influencer lifestyle. We're not influencers, I should add. Clearly not. But like, that's the dream, isn't it?
So yeah,
sit back, let the green roll in.
I mean, Beastwick, I would have, if you want to email it something like this. But yeah, thank you very much.
If you want to say something, if you want us to announce something,
yeah
promote something.
So yeah, thank you very much, Beastwick.
There's not much I wouldn't say or do for $20.
And now we get to Mog. Mog gave us 10 English pounds. Thank you very much, Mog, as always. Mog said, I have been bested in Super Chat Combat. A brief question this week. Will you be going to EGX in October, restrictions permitting? Superb show as always, chaps, despite the relative news drought. It was last week. Thank you very much, Mog. It's very, very kind of you. Will we be going to EGX in October, restrictions permitting? What say you, Matthew? Are you going to leave your house for any games conventions?
If I have to go for work, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Would I go just as a punter? I mean, listen, obviously I love everything that our corporate overlords do. I'm a big, not everything. There was one thing they did I didn't like. But there was, I'm more of I'm more of a resed guy. I would definitely go to Resd when that is next on, if that is next on. I don't know. Live Weekspot at EGX.
Yeah, like Matthew, if I am contractually obligated to go, I will, of course. But I mean, I am seeing some sporting events and all that with crowds, and it makes me a little. I don't know. Would I be entirely comfortable walking around EGX, that convention center, if there was 15, 20, I don't know. I have no idea what the numbers would be. But we'll see.
And I do believe that the followers of the Weekspot are fundamentally decent and clean people. So were we to do it at EGX and people could come along, that I wouldn't worry too much about them. It's all the other scum.
Correct. But yeah, thank you very much, Mog. Very, very kind of you. So will we be in EGX? Who knows?
Who knows?
Sean got in touch. Sean said, have either of you ever felt compelled to give up on a game because a mechanic felt like cheating even though it wasn't? I recently did this when Shadow Tactics introduced its sniper, even though it's obviously baked into the gameplay. So you're not gaming the system, Matthew. The game has given you the tools to use, but it feels like cheating, is what Sean is asking.
I don't know. I definitely have a problem with, I'm very good at cheesing stuff and working out cheap tactics and then leaning into it, which is quite hard when you're reviewing games, because you're like, is this bad, or am I making this bad myself is it bad that this opportunity exists and I found it, or is this my play style to blame? Which doesn't really answer the question, but a mechanic felt like cheating.
I see.
I'm trying to think.
I don't think I have.
It's not so much mechanic as just a convention, and it's in so many games that I don't think you can call it out, but like just excessive use of quick save and quick load. I am an absolute fiend for it. I kind of have a natural preference or affinity towards games that like autosave and take saving out of my hands, and like the rules are just a bit clearer. Like I can kind of, I like to, in those cases, it feels like you're kind of playing it on, sort of as the designers intended it or whatever, where I feel like left to my own devices, I will just cheat like hell and diminish the whole thing. Of course, like a bad autosave system with like crap checkpoints or whatever is hellish, but does that count as a mechanic? The save mechanic?
I mean, it does, but I suppose Sean is asking, like, have you ever been turned off by? And it doesn't seem like you've been turned off by being able to.
No,
save.
I guess, but that it would manifest more as just like the being bored through repetition. So, like, I stopped playing Ghost of Tsushima because I felt like I was just doing the same thing in every single fight, and I don't know if that's because it's a especially good or powerful mechanic, or just the game doesn't have enough ideas. But, it doesn't feel like cheating. It's just boring,
Yeah. See, that's the same. Like
that's the only thing that like most games I'll finish. If I don't, it's because they're boring. Like Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, that's fair. Or we'll take one more question this week. This one is from Ross on the Isle of Wight. Ross says, following on from the discussion of cartoons on a recent Weekspot, what's the best game based off a cartoon? Anything good outside of the South Park RPGs? Ross on the Isle of Wight, apparently the home of the world's only commercial hovercraft service.
Ooh. The Isle of Wight hovercraft, I love it. Used to go on that as a child. Very, very nice. Buzz across to the Isle of Wight, get some coloured sand.
Not a ferry, a hovercraft.
That used to be a popular joke when we were kids. What's hot and steaming and comes out of cows? The Isle of Wight ferry. There's a port called Cows.
Very good.
That joke lands big if you live in the Portsmouth area.
I can imagine. So yeah, good games based on cartoons. DuckTales. I mean, listen, it's well, I don't know. Is it a small pool? Like, most recent one that comes to mind, kind of a relatively recent game, would be Dragon Ball FighterZ, which I really enjoyed. I have no attachment to Dragon Ball Z, but that game struck the perfect balance for somebody who doesn't play an awful lot of fighting games, because you could do very little and the characters would do the most incredible moves. I enjoyed that. But then I think apart from that, unless you have something, I think you're going back to the glory days of the 90s and your Aladdins or Castle of Illusion or that kind of stuff.
They definitely work better in those like gorgeous 2D platformers just because they look a lot, translated well. And I guess like you could say some of the, if you're into Kingdom Hearts, disclaimer, I'm not. But as a sort of, to see those cartoon worlds turned into like 3D places that are kind of true to them is maybe impressive if you can put up with all the absolute horse shit that comes with those games.
So would you
SpongeBob SquarePants, Battle for Bikini Bottom, that classic collectathon, aka Psychonauts without the ideas.
I think you're looking at the Mega Drive SNES era, your Aladdins, your Lion Kings, your so on and so forth.
It doesn't feel like we get as many of those big licensed games anymore.
Very few, yeah.
people just remake them or remaster the ones which there is some nostalgic, enthusiasm for. But yeah.
Can you?
There you go. That's your answer. Is there a good Simpsons game? Do people like the GTA one?
Hit and Run. I think that was, or no, that was kind of more was that it was more Taxi, what's it called? Crazy Taxi than GTA, wasn't it? In that.
I thought you drove around, you could get out the car and go and look at Flanders House.
Maybe you could. I didn't think you could.
No, you're thinking Road Rage was the Crazy Taxi one.
Sorry. Yeah. I don't know. Basically, there haven't been any standout hits, I suppose. If you want to retroactively say Cuphead, because there's going to be a Cuphead cartoon, but that feels cheating.
Same with Castlevania.
Yes. Yeah. Dead Space. Isn't there? They're making that into an anime. Splinter Cell, etc., etc. So yeah, thank you very much for that question, Ross. If you want to get your question into the Week Spot, then email us weekspot@rockpapershotgun.com. However, fill up that inbox now, but we are going to be taking a little break, right? So there won't be a Week Spot next week. There won't be a Week Spot after that. The next Week Spot, just looking at the calendar now, is going to be on the 14th of September. So fill up the inbox, if you like, and we will get to your questions then. But maybe don't make them too timely. If you're like, oh, how was your 27th of August, lads? Ask us whatever you want. I want more questions that aren't related to games and more local facts as well.
Oh, I love it. Give us those local facts.
I love a local fact.
I'll answer any question. I should prepare them more in advance. Rather than trying to desperately tell bad jokes about cows while I think of an answer.
Bad jokes? That was quality, Matthew. Thank you very much. Weekspot@rockpapershotgun.com. So that is just about it for this episode of the PC Gaming Weekspot. If you want more of us and more Rock Paper Shotgun goodness even, there are ways to get more. You can follow us on social media. I am at Colin_Hearn. Matthew's at Mr. Basil_Pesto. Rock Paper Shotgun is at Rock Paper Shot. If you want to talk to some like-minded folks, head on over to Discord, discord.gg/Rock Paper Shotgun. If you want to watch the Week Spot, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rock Paper Shot. If you want to listen to the Week Spot or any of Rock Paper Shotgun's podcasts, search for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so on and so forth. If you want some RPS merch, go to store.repop.com, click on the little Rock Paper Shotgun button. There's a couple of t-shirts there for you. If you want to support the site, Rock Paper Shotgun, and also get an ad-free website, extra articles, extra podcasts, go to rockpapershotgun.com/subscribe. But for all of your PC gaming needs, go to rockpapershotgun.com. So, we won't be back for a few weeks' time, but when we come back, we will be living in a... Won't we be living in a Deathloop world? I think Deathloop will have come out then, or pretty close to around then.
We'll all be bored again.
We'll be waiting for 2022 when video games will start up again. We will see. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Again, we'll be back the 14th of September. See you then. But now it is time for my least favorite part of the show. This is the part of the show must bid the listener, the viewer, adieu. So say goodbye, Matthew Castle.
Goodbye.
And say goodbye, Colin Mahern, Sloan Gafford.